My name is Andrea, I'm 35 years old, and I live alone in a small house in the suburbs of Colorado Springs. I work as a manager for an interior design firm, a busy but stable job that lets me maintain a peaceful and independent life. I'm not someone who trusts easily, but when it comes to family, I've always tried to hold on to what little connection remained. A few months ago, my younger sister, Melissa, 29, called me in the middle of the night. Her voice was weak, trembling like she had just finished crying. She said she'd been laid off when her company suddenly shut down, and soon after she was diagnosed with the West Nile virus. My heart sank. We were never that close, but I couldn't ignore what she was going through. Our parents had retired and moved to Florida years ago, and they were no longer in a position to care for her. Her friends, if she had any, lived far away or were struggling with their own lives. After a few phone calls with our parents, I decided to let Melissa move in with me, at least until she recovered and figured out her next steps. When she arrived, she looked so frail I almost didn't recognize her. Her skin was dull, her eyes shadowed, and she moved as if even the slightest breeze could knock her over. I rearranged the living room and cleaned up the spare bedroom so she could rest. Every day, I cooked for her, picked up her medication, and drove her to her checkups. I even arranged to work from home more often so I could be there for her. I didn't complain. It was what a big sister should do. "Thank you for doing all this," Melissa said one evening, eyes red as I set a tray of food on the bedside table. "I know how busy you are. I don't even know how to say thank you." I smiled, masking the exhaustion in my eyes. "Family helps each other. You don't need to thank me." At the time, I truly believed I was doing the right thing. I'd always been a little rigid, someone who believed that doing good would bring good in return. I never imagined that kindness would turn into the biggest trap of my life. Melissa stayed with me for almost 2 months. Her health slowly improved. She could walk around, cook simple meals, even laugh once in a while. I thought things were getting better. But sometimes something felt off. The way she looked around the house, or the way she asked about certain things I owned, like she was calculating their worth. "This house must have cost a lot, huh?" she asked casually one morning while I made coffee. I just laughed, assuming she was making small talk. "It's decent, but I worked hard for it. I still have to make monthly payments." I didn't notice her expression then. A quick look, part envy, part calculation. I saw it but brushed it off. Because she was my sister, the one I had taken in, the one I'd sat up with on sleepless nights as she burned with fever. I never could have imagined that the house I opened to her would become the place where everything in me began to unravel, that the worst days of my life would begin the moment I believed that family would never hurt you. 3 months after Melissa moved in, a seemingly normal Friday afternoon became the moment that buried every ounce of trust I had. I had just gotten home from work, still in my office clothes, when I found Melissa waiting for me in the living room. Her makeup was light but noticeable, her hair neatly tied back, and she was wearing the floral dress I had once lent her, as if something special was about to happen. Beside her, my husband Ethan sat on the couch, pale as a ghost, looking like he'd just received terrifying news. The whole scene sent a chill through me. "What's going on?" I asked, my heartbeat quickening. Melissa glanced at Ethan, then turned to me with a theatrical expression. "You should probably sit down." I didn't. Something in my gut told me I'd need all the strength I had to stay upright for what was coming. "There's something important I need to say," she began, her voice trembling. "On purpose. I'm pregnant." I blinked. Took a second to register. "Pregnant? Whose baby?" She turned to Ethan. I followed her gaze, and saw that he wasn't avoiding eye contact anymore. He just bowed his head and sighed. It's his silence. Nothing but the ticking of the wall clock. I stood there frozen, my heart stopping. Every word Melissa spoke stabbed into me like a needle. I had cared for her, fed her, trusted my husband completely, and here they were, betraying me, together. Under my roof. "You can be angry, I get it," Melissa said. "But the truth is, What's done is done. And now I'm carrying this child. I can't live here feeling like a criminal. I think you should move out, so Ethan and I can start our new family. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the audacity of it all shattered logic. Come again? I asked coldly. You want me to leave my own house so you and my husband can start a family? I just thought, she faltered. You'd understand. We're family. This baby, it's your niece or nephew. Don't call me your sister. I cut her off, my voice ice. That baby is the result of betrayal, while you were living off my food, my medicine, under my roof. Ethan said nothing. I turned to him. You have nothing to say? I didn't know Melissa would tell you like this. So you knew, I pressed. It only happened a few times. I thought we could keep it hidden. Hidden? I let out a dry laugh. You thought you could live a double life in this house and I'd never find out? I didn't cry. I had no tears left when trust had already been burned to ash. I walked upstairs, grabbed a small bag, my house deed, and my bank cards. Then I came back down and placed them all on the table. I'm not going anywhere, I said, looking Melissa dead in the eye. This house is in my name. Every brick, every chair, paid for by me. If anyone's uncomfortable here, they can leave. Melissa looked at me like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. But I'm pregnant. Don't use that baby to shield your greed, I said. If you had the nerve to sleep with my husband, you should have the nerve to find your own place. Ethan stayed silent, his gaze on the floor, defeated. I didn't have to shout or break things. My silence was louder than any scream. I would never forgive them. At that moment, I knew. A door had closed forever. And the saddest part? The one who shut it was the person who once called me sister. Melissa stood frozen, her face drained of color. Ethan sat there like he was awaiting a verdict. I crossed my arms, holding myself steady even as my heart pounded. But my voice? It didn't waver. It was sharp, precise. I'll be filing for divorce on Monday, I said, eyes fixed on Ethan. You can pack your things tonight, and Melissa? I turned to her. You're no longer welcome here. You can't do this, Melissa stammered. I have nowhere else to go. I'm pregnant. Are you really going to kick me out onto the street? I let out a cold laugh. That's funny. When you were trying to steal my husband and kick me out of my own home, did that cross your mind? Ethan looked up slightly, his eyes dazed. Andrea, I know I messed up. I know there's no excuse, but you have to understand, what happened between me and Melissa didn't start as a plan. It just spiraled. Spiraled? I repeated, nearly laughing. You're talking about betrayal, not slipping in the shower. I walked straight to the small safe in the corner of the room and pulled out the house documents, every single one in my name, because I bought the house before we got married. I laid them out on the table one by one, as if spelling out a truth they could no longer deny. Melissa, I said slowly, you thought this house belonged to both me and Ethan, didn't you? She nodded, her eyes filled with confusion and fear. That's unfortunate. You should have checked before trying to take something that was never yours. Ethan doesn't own a thing here. No title, no stake, not even a savings account. I turned to Ethan and saw the shame and desperation all over his face. Melissa looked like she'd been hit with a bucket of ice water. She turned to him, eyes wide. You told me. You were managing the finances, that everything here was in your name. Ethan exhaled. I said that because I felt pathetic. What did you think I was? A successful author? I've been stuck on the same draft for 3 years. Everything you've seen here, it's all Andrea's. Melissa stepped back, like she'd just been stabbed. Only this time, by the very person she thought she could trust. You lied to me. And you betrayed me. I stepped forward, just enough so they could both hear me clearly. Fair trade? I left them there, standing in their shame. Then I said what I had been thinking ever since I found out. You both need to pack your things and be out of this house within an hour. If not, I'll call the police. Ethan nodded silently and stumbled upstairs to start packing. Melissa stayed frozen in place, her eyes shifting from rage to panic before she suddenly collapsed to the floor, sobbing. Andrea, I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought... You thought what? That you could destroy someone's marriage and slide into their place like nothing happened? I looked down at my sister, hunched on the floor. I don't need your apology. I need you gone. I turned away, not allowing myself to soften. Sisterhood, once stretched past its breaking point, can't be saved. An hour later, they were gone. Ethan said nothing. Melissa was still crying, but this time in silence, probably because she knew every last card in her hand had been laid bare. I shut the door behind them. For the first time in weeks, the house fell into a strange kind of quiet. I stood there for a moment, leaning against the door, letting out a silent breath. I had lost a marriage, I had lost family, but I hadn't lost myself. I don't know how long I stood there after the last sound of tires faded from the driveway. It was completely dark. The house sat in eerie stillness. No more Melissa dragging her feet down the hallway. No more clacking keyboard from Ethan pretending to work on his manuscript. Just me, a dry emptiness, and a house as cold as stone. I didn't cry. I wasn't even angry anymore. It just felt like every cell in my body had burned out. I turned on the lights, room by room, opened every window to let in the night air. The air felt thick, like the house had been through a fire. No flames, just wreckage. I started cleaning. Everything tied to Melissa. Pillows, bags, her medication, the clothes she had stuffed in the closet, I gathered it all. No sorting, no second thoughts. I didn't bother folding. I shoved each item into her suitcase like I was erasing her from my life. As for Ethan, unfinished drafts, philosophy books he never read, the bath towel I gave him on our second anniversary, I packed them into a bag and shoved it to the front door. Just as I dragged the last suitcase into the foyer, the doorbell rang. I knew who it was. Melissa stood there, eyes red, cheeks streaked with tears. She wore the hoodie I once let her borrow, arms wrapped around her stomach like she was trying to win sympathy. Andrea, please, let me stay just one night. I don't know where to go. I'm sorry, I really am. I looked straight into those eyes, the same eyes that once made me cave when she was little and broke her arm falling off a bike. But this time, they weren't the eyes of a sister in need. They were the eyes of someone who had crushed trust and was now trying to patch it up with cheap tears. No, I said, hand firm on the door. You're not allowed back here. Not tonight, not ever. But I have no one. You had someone. My husband. And you chose to betray me with him. So now, take care of each other. Melissa collapsed onto the cold porch tile, sobbing. I don't know what I was thinking. I messed up. I know I did. I stood still. It's too late, Melissa. Starting today, you're no longer part of my life. I closed the door without another word. The sound of the lock clicking into place felt final. The next morning, I brought the divorce papers to my lawyer's office. Everything had already been prepared. Ethan would have no claim to any assets since everything was in my name and clearly documented. I didn't want to drag it out. I just wanted it over. As I signed the final document, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before hitting silence. I wasn't ready to explain. I wasn't ready for the excuses or the judgment. At 3 p.m., the lawyer called to confirm the divorce papers had been filed. The court would be sending Ethan a summons in the coming days. When I hung up, a strange calm washed over me. I wasn't happy, but I felt clean. That night, I sat alone on the balcony, poured myself a cup of mint tea, and looked out into the night sky. The cold wind slipped through my hair, rustling the leaves like a soft whisper from the peaceful days. I once thought were gone. I knew the road ahead would be hard. I'd face phone calls, rumors, maybe even resentment from relatives. But I also knew I had done the right thing. I had chosen myself. In the end, if I didn't protect me, who would? Just 3 days after filing for divorce, my phone rang again. This time, I didn't press silence fast enough. My mom's name lit up the screen before I could hang up. I hesitated for a second, then answered, "Hi, Mom." "So you're finally picking up?" Her voice sharp, no greeting. "Andrea, I heard from Melissa that you kicked her out of your house while she's pregnant. Is that true?" I closed my eyes and kept my voice calm. "Yes, I couldn't let her stay after what she did." "You really think that was the right thing to do?" she snapped. "Melissa is pregnant with Ethan's child, has no job, no home. You think this makes you strong? Because to me, it just makes you cruel." I was quiet for a few seconds. "You know she slept with my husband, right? What she did was wrong. I'm not excusing it. But Ethan is older, more experienced, and knew how to manipulate things. I believe if Melissa made a mistake, it's because she was led into it." I could barely believe my ears. Manipulated? Mom, are you talking about a grown woman, almost 30, who was living off her sister, then used the time I was at work to steal my husband? That's what you call manipulated? "You're being too harsh, Andrea," my mom snapped. "Family doesn't act like that. When someone stumbles, we don't throw them out. We reach out and lift them up." "I already reached out, Mom." I took a deep breath. "I let Melissa into my home. I took care of her, every meal, every prescription, and the way she thanked me was with the most blatant betrayal imaginable." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds, then my mom's voice softened. "She's still your sister. And that baby? It's blood. It's family. You can't be so heartless." I closed my eyes. For a moment, I was pulled back to childhood, when I was always the one expected to be stronger, to give in to my weaker little sister, even when it was never fair. And now, the same script was playing again. Except this time, the price wasn't a toy or a slice of cake. It was my entire marriage, and my dignity. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said, my voice strangely calm, "but this time, I'm not backing down. Not anymore." My mom went silent, like she couldn't believe I'd said that. Then she said one final line, heavy as stone. "You've changed. You're not the daughter I used to know." I ended the call without responding. Maybe she was right. I had changed. But not because I wanted to. They had forced me to, so I wouldn't get trampled again. The next morning, I got a text from my dad, short and to the point. "Your mother's really upset. If you can, think this over. Families shouldn't turn their backs on each other over a mistake." I didn't respond. I didn't have the energy to explain myself to people who only saw one side of the story. They hadn't lived in that house. They didn't come home late at night to find Melissa and Ethan on the couch, laughing at some movie like I didn't exist. They weren't the ones who trusted and got betrayed under their own roof. By the afternoon, I emailed my lawyer and asked them to expedite the divorce. I attached additional documents, statements, and anything else needed. I wanted this to end as soon as possible. No more dragging it out. No more chances for anyone to pull me back into that chaos. That night, just as I turned off the lights and got ready for bed, the doorbell rang again. I peeked through the curtain. It was my mother, standing there in a thin coat, clutching her purse tightly. When she looked up at the window, her expression wasn't angry or sharp like on the phone. It was something else. Something I couldn't name. I didn't open the door, I just stood there, watching quietly, then turned around and walked away. Not because I didn't love her, but because I couldn't keep loving without being protected. A week after the tense call with my mom, I thought things had finally settled down. I went back to work, focused on my unfinished projects, tried to keep my mind from slipping back into the pain my family had caused. But The peace lasted only 3 days. Monday morning, just as I walked into the office, my assistant, Sam, rushed up to me with a concerned face. "Andrea, there's an older woman. She's been sitting in the lobby since 8 a.m., says she's your mother and it's urgent." I sighed, not even trying to hide how tired I was. I didn't want a scene at work, so I nodded and told Sam to bring her to a small meeting room. As soon as the door closed, she pulled an envelope from her purse and slid it across the table. "Ultrasound results. Melissa lost the baby. The doctor said it was due to stress." I said nothing, just stared at the paper, feeling cold inside. "See what you've done," she hissed, her voice shaking with anger. "You pushed your sister to this. Is that how a big sister behaves?" I looked up at her, meeting her eyes. "I didn't make Melissa do anything. She made her own choices. And as for the miscarriage," I took a breath. "I'm sorry it happened, but I'm not responsible for someone else's emotions or decisions." A pregnant woman, kicked out of her home with no one and nowhere to go. Do you really think that wouldn't affect her mentally? And you still think you're right? Each word hit like a slap. Not because I felt guilty, but because it hit me. My family never truly stood with me. "Then why didn't you take Melissa in, Mom? Or any of the relatives who care so much? Everyone's quick to defend her, right?" She didn't answer. I went on, my voice no longer soft. "Because all of you are quick to judge, but when it's time to actually help, nobody steps up. Don't guilt me into carrying consequences for mistakes that weren't mine." My mom stood up abruptly, her eyes red with rage. "You've become so cold, Andrea. You have no heart left." "No, Mom," I replied firmly. "I'm just learning how to protect my heart, after it was shattered by the people I loved the most." She said nothing more. She just left the ultrasound paper on the table and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her, softly, but with the weight of a boulder. That afternoon, I got a message from a relative, Aunt Evelyn, my mom's cousin, someone I rarely saw. "Andrea, I don't want to interfere, but everyone in the family is talking. They all say you've gone too far. Melissa's heartbroken. Please reconsider." I held the phone, feeling numb. Everyone in the family. None of them were here. None of them saw it. Yet they had no problem deciding who was right and wrong, like they were reading some cheap novel. I replied with just one sentence. "If everyone cares so much about Melissa, why hasn't anyone offered her a place to stay?" No one responded. That night, I got another call, this time from Jenna, my best friend from college. Her voice was tentative. "What's going on? I heard from some of your relatives. They said you kicked Melissa out while she was pregnant, and now—" I cut her off. Melissa betrayed me. In my own house. With my own husband. Silence on the other end. "She destroyed everything. I'm just the one cleaning up the mess," I added. "And I'm not obligated to play background for someone else to live a life they don't deserve." Jenna let out a slow breath. "I get it. I'm sorry for asking." "It's okay," I said gently. "I just don't want anyone else telling my story wrong anymore." Eventually, I wrote a long letter, not to send to anyone, just to keep for myself. In it, I laid everything out from beginning to end, no sugarcoating, no edits. I wanted to record the truth. Not to justify anything, but to remind myself, sometimes holding your boundaries is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. And when I folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer, I knew one thing more clearly than ever. I didn't need the whole world to understand me. I just needed to stop betraying myself. 3 weeks after filing for divorce, I got an unexpected message from Ethan. He didn't call. Didn't say much, just one line. "I need to tell you something. It's important." I was about to delete it, but something inside me hesitated. I didn't feel anything for him anymore. The anger had long given way to indifference. But I still wanted to know. Not because I cared, but because I needed full closure. I replied simply, "Say it." Less than a minute later, my phone rang. It was Ethan. I picked up, keeping my tone calm, like I was answering a work call. "I'm not calling to apologize or make excuses," he said right away. "I just need you to know the truth. Melissa was never pregnant." I sat up straight. "What did you say?" "I suspected it from the start." His voice sounded drained. "She said she was pregnant, but wouldn't let me go with her to the doctor. I asked multiple times, offered to take her to an ultrasound, even gave her the number of a local clinic. But she always avoided it." I stayed quiet. In my head, all the broken pieces began shifting into place. "She just kept saying the doctor told her to rest, not to move around much," Ethan continued. "Then, when you got the ultrasound paper, it came from your mom, not Melissa. I never saw the original. She said she lost it." "So the miscarriage was fake too?" I asked, my voice low. I asked her. She didn't answer, just cried. But there were no documents, no records. No doctor ever confirmed anything. She just, one day, said she lost the baby. I leaned back in my chair. My heart didn't ache. It clenched in a different way, a deeper kind of hurt. The feeling of being deceived to the core by your own family. "I called because I heard your family's blaming you, saying you caused Melissa to miscarry." "I couldn't let you carry that," Ethan said, hesitating. "I know it's late, but the truth still deserves to be told." I didn't respond right away. My mind raced with questions. When did Melissa come up with this fake pregnancy? What was her plan? To trap Ethan? Push me out of the house? Or just earn pity? Forgiveness? Whatever her motive, one thing was now clear. She had never been pregnant. "Thanks for telling the truth," I said. Short, but honest. Before hanging up, Ethan added, "I know I don't deserve to say this, but I hope you find peace. And, if you can, let it all go, Andrea. Don't let what happened between me and her stain the rest of your life." I didn't reply. I just hung up, then sat still for a long time, staring out the window. The next day, I printed the text exchange and wrote down everything Ethan said. Not to share with anyone, just to keep. As proof to myself that I wasn't crazy, or cold, or cruel, like my family had claimed. That afternoon, I called my mother. This time, I was the one to reach out. "Do you have a minute?" I asked. "What's this about?" Her voice was cold, guarded. "I just wanted to inform you of something," I said slowly. "Melissa was never pregnant." There was no response. I heard the sound of her swallowing hard. It was Ethan who confirmed it. He said he asked her many times, but she always dodged the questions. There were no documents, no doctors who ever confirmed anything. She faked it, to stay, to be forgiven, to have someone take her side. "Do you have any proof?" my mom asked, her voice smaller. "I don't need proof, Mom," I said calmly. "I'm done proving anything to anyone. I only called to let you know. Whether you believe it or not is up to you. But if you're going to keep blaming me for a pregnancy that never existed, then this conversation can end right here." Mom was silent for a long time. Then she spoke, her voice almost trembling. "Andrea, I didn't know. I really didn't know." "I know," I said softly, "and that's why I don't resent you. But I'll never forget how everyone turned their back on me. For a lie wrapped in tears." I hung up after that. And for the first time since everything happened, I felt completely at peace. Nothing left to prove. No one left to please. I had stepped out of their shadow, and this time, on my own 2 feet. One morning in early June, I received an email confirmation from the court. The divorce had been finalized. The entire process wrapped up faster than expected, since Ethan didn't contest anything. No disputes, no conditions. We were now officially strangers on paper. And that brought me a kind of relief I couldn't even describe. I printed the court order, filed it neatly with my personal records, then picked up my phone and opened my contact list. Mom? Blocked. Dad? Blocked. Melissa? Blocked. Every missed call, every unread message, every bitter accusation, I left it all behind. Not out of hatred, but because I finally understood. Forgiveness doesn't mean keeping people in your life. That evening, I treated myself to a warm dinner. No one across the table, but for the first time in months, I felt peace. I turned on my old playlist, picked a soft jazz track, poured a glass of red wine, and sat by the window, watching the evening light fall over the backyard. This house had once been a home, then a place of betrayal, arguments, and tears. But now, I was choosing to make it mine again. Completely. I started with small changes, replaced the curtains, moved the sofa, took down the old wedding photo, and hung an empty frame instead, as a reminder that every new chapter begins with blank space. I changed the bedding, painted the living room in a soft sage green, and ordered a few indoor plants. Life slowly found its rhythm again, like every breath I took was part of the healing. Every morning, I made coffee just for myself, not for two. Every night, I read a few pages of a book, no longer interrupted by loud TV shows in the living room. I was learning to listen to myself again, something I hadn't done in a long time. One day, I ran into an old college friend, Rachel, at a book fair. We hugged tightly. She looked at me with concern and kindness. "Are you okay?" Rachel asked, gently touching my shoulder. I smiled. "I'm healing, slowly, but surely." She nodded. "I knew you'd get through it. You've always been stronger than you think." We sat down at a nearby cafe and talked for hours. We didn't dwell on the past. We focused on the future. Plans, ideas, even travel dreams I had buried in a drawer because I was too busy taking care of people who didn't deserve it. That night, when I got home, I opened my laptop and searched through old emails for a canceled flight to Charleston, a coastal city I once dreamed of visiting. I had canceled that trip 2 years ago, just because Ethan didn't like the sun. Now, there was no one left to stop me. I rebooked the ticket, for one. The flight was scheduled for next Friday. Looking at the confirmation on my screen, I felt something lift from my chest, like I'd just broken free from an invisible chain that had held me back for years. I know I'm still healing. Emotional wounds don't fade after just one summer. But I also know this for certain. I've broken out of the cycle of blind sacrifice. I won't let anyone, not even family, force me into playing the perfect sister ever again. I no longer care where Melissa is, what she's doing, or what version of the story she's telling to gain sympathy. I don't try to explain myself to my parents anymore. They're free to believe whatever they want, but I also have the right to live in my truth. And that truth is, I chose myself. Not out of selfishness, but because I deserve a life with boundaries, with limits, and with peace. The scars are still there, but I've taken back control. No one enters my life anymore without permission. Once a woman who believed in family and marriage, Andrea experienced the deepest betrayal of her life by her own sister and husband. But instead of falling apart, she chose to walk away, set boundaries, and reclaim her peace. Andrea understands now that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is leave toxic relationships, even when they share your blood. From that pain, she rediscovered herself, a stronger, steadier version who knows she is worthy of love. What do you think of Andrea's decision? Was she too harsh, or was it what she needed to protect herself? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful family stories to come. I am Olivia Harrington, the youngest daughter of Richard and Eleanor Harrington, two powerhouses in New York's financial world. My family owns Harrington & Co., a multi-million-dollar investment empire with a portfolio spanning real estate, stocks, and venture capital. To the public, My parents were not only financial masterminds, but also highly influential figures, frequently gracing the covers of prestigious business magazines. My sister, Victoria Harrington, is the pride of our family. From a young age, she excelled in every field our parents expected of her. Educated at the most prestigious institutions, she entered the financial world with confidence and sharp strategy. At just 25, Victoria became the youngest executive director of the company, quickly taking control of key investments. With her flawless appearance, exceptional intelligence, and ability to dominate the market, she was seen as the perfect, unblemished gem of the Harrington family. As for me, I never quite fit into their world. Even as a child, I felt like an outsider among numbers, charts, and hours-long shareholder meetings. My parents expected me to follow in their footsteps, but I had no interest in billion-dollar deals or high-pressure negotiations. What fascinated me were projects on sustainable energy and environmental strategy consulting, fields my family had never valued. I pursued a degree in environmental science, determined to find new solutions for efficient resource use. When I turned down an internship at Harrington & Co. to work at a renewable energy startup, my parents were utterly disappointed. They never said it outright, but their silence and disapproving looks spoke volumes. At family dinners, I was always on the periphery of conversations, listening to my parents and Victoria discuss profits, mergers, and investment funds, while my ideas on sustainability were dismissed as childish hobbies. Victoria never had to fight for recognition. She was exactly the kind of person our parents had always wanted me to be: strong, sharp, and entirely focused on building the family's wealth. She often looked at me with pity, occasionally making light-hearted remarks about how I was wasting my potential on things that don't generate profit. I knew that in their eyes, I was just a dreamer with no real impact. They believed I would never build anything of real value. But I had never needed their approval. What I didn't expect was that my life was about to change in ways no one, myself included, could have foreseen. Everything changed with a single phone call on a cold February morning. I was at my office, focused on completing a report on renewable energy storage methods, when my phone vibrated. Victoria's number. She rarely called me unless it was something serious. "Olivia," her voice came through, lower than usual. "Where are you?" "At the office." "What's wrong?" A long silence stretched between us, making my heart tighten. Something wasn't right. "Mom and Dad," she took a deep breath as if trying to steady herself. "They were in a plane crash. No one survived." I froze. Her words hit me like a gust of icy wind, leaving me dizzy. "No, that can't be." My voice trembled. "Their private jet crashed in the Colorado mountains on the way from New York to Los Angeles. The news will break soon." Even though there had always been a distance between my parents and me, hearing they were suddenly gone still left me stunned. They had always been strong, always in control of everything, and now they were gone. 3 days later, their funeral was held at a grand church in Manhattan. Influential figures from the financial world attended, and speeches praising Richard and Eleanor Harrington's remarkable careers filled the air. Meanwhile, I stood quietly at the sidelines, still trying to process that they were truly gone. But before the grief had even settled, an even harsher truth awaited me. 2 weeks after the funeral, I was summoned to the family lawyer's office, the official reading of the will. The office was located in a skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan. When I entered, Victoria was already seated in a leather chair, composed, her gaze filled with confidence. Opposite us sat Albert Sterling, the family's longtime attorney, a man who had witnessed countless deals and negotiations within the Harrington empire. Clearing his throat, he opened a thick file in front of him. "First and foremost, let me express my deepest condolences to both of you," he said in a measured tone, before getting straight to the point. "According to the official will of Mr. and Mrs. Harrington," he glanced over his reading glasses, "the entirety of Harrington & Co.'s shares, the real estate properties in New York, Miami, and London, along with all investments and liquid assets, will be transferred to Miss Victoria Harrington." Even though I had anticipated this outcome, Hearing those words still felt like a punch to the chest. And as for Miss Olivia Harrington, Mr. Sterling continued, flipping to another page. I waited, a flicker of hope stirring within me. Maybe they had left me a small portion of the estate. Maybe they had thought of me, even just a little. You will inherit an old ranch in rural Texas, formerly owned by your grandfather, Howard Harrington. An eerie silence filled the room. I blinked. A ranch? In Texas? Victoria let out a sharp laugh, making no effort to conceal her disdain. Well, isn't that interesting? She looked at me, a smirk curling her lips. Maybe Mom and Dad thought you'd be better suited to tending livestock than running a financial empire. My hands clenched under the table. I looked up at Mr. Sterling, trying to keep my voice steady. Is that all? No company shares, no bank accounts, no investments? Mr. Sterling skimmed through the documents before nodding. The Harrington Ranch, spanning over 150 acres, along with some related legal paperwork. He slid an envelope toward me. Nothing else. Victoria crossed her arms, her eyes glinting with triumph. Well, there you have it, Olivia. If you want to live like a real farmer, be my guest. But if you ever need financial assistance, I'd be happy to help. With a reasonable interest rate, of course. I stared at the envelope in front of me, fighting to suppress the emotions rising inside me. My parents had truly believed I was incapable of achieving anything. When I left the office, all I had in my possession was an old key and a deed to an abandoned ranch in the middle of the Texas desert. No shares, no valuable assets, no place in the company. Just a piece of land my father had once deemed worthless, a place no one in the family had ever spoken of. But what unsettled me the most wasn't the unfairness of the will. It was the real reason behind it. Why had they left me that ranch? Was it their way of quietly cutting me out of the family? Or was there something more that I didn't know? As I stepped out of the skyscraper, I looked up at Manhattan's gray sky, a new determination brewing inside me. If this was all they had left me, then I would find out why. 3 days later, I booked a flight to Texas. After a 3-hour flight and an additional 2-hour drive through the dusty Texas roads, I finally arrived. Harrington Ranch. A faded wooden sign with barely legible letters stood at the entrance. Beyond it stretched an expanse of land, vast and endless. Dry fields, scattered cacti, and an old 2-story wooden house stood alone in the arid landscape. I stepped out of the car, glancing around. There was no sign of life, only the wind whistling through the barren trees. This was what my parents had left me? I took a deep breath and walked toward the main house. The wooden door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing a space covered in dust and the scent of aged timber. The interior was simple, seemingly untouched for years, but strangely, everything remained intact, as if its owner had only just left. As I walked down the hallway, a series of old photographs on the wall caught my attention. One in particular made me stop. A black and white picture of my grandfather, Howard Harrington, standing beside a large building that looked like a storage facility or a workshop. I didn't know much about my grandfather. Growing up, I had only heard my father speak of him with disappointment. Howard had once been an investor, but according to my father, he had wasted the last years of his life chasing some foolish dream out here on this ranch. And then it struck me. If my father thought this place was worthless, why hadn't he sold it? I picked up the photograph, examining it more closely. My grandfather's eyes gleamed with pride, but what truly caught my attention was the small inscription at the bottom. Harrington Experimental Facility, 1987. An experimental facility? Here? On this ranch? I stepped outside, scanning my surroundings. In the picture, behind my grandfather, stood a large metal structure. I walked around the property, searching for anything similar, and then I saw it. About 200 meters from the main house, amidst the dry grass fields, stood a large metal warehouse with a heavy door. The marks of time were evident: peeling paint, rust spreading across its surface, and an old padlock dangling from the handle. Why would a warehouse in an abandoned ranch need to be locked? I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key the lawyer had given me. Could this be the key to the warehouse? I slid it into the lock and turned it gently. A soft click echoed in the still air. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit space inside. Sunlight streamed in, illuminating rows of dust-covered wooden shelves, large metal containers, and a desk tucked into the corner of the warehouse. On the desk, a stack of yellowed papers lay untouched. I stepped inside, running my fingers along the wooden surface. A worn leather notebook sat atop the pile, its cracked cover bearing a handwritten title, The Harrington Project. My heartbeat quickened as I flipped through the first few pages. Inside were detailed notes on a project my grandfather had worked on. Geological surveys, complex calculations, and hand-drawn diagrams mapping out layers of rock and soil. One particular word appeared repeatedly throughout the pages. Lithium. I held my breath. Lithium. A crucial element in the rechargeable battery industry, renewable energy, and electric vehicles. One of the most valuable metals of the 21st century. Had my grandfather been researching lithium? I quickly sifted through the rest of the documents. A detailed map of the ranch surfaced with a specific area circled in red. Below it, my grandfather had written, High reserves, significant potential, absolute confidentiality. My throat went dry. My grandfather had discovered a lithium deposit, right beneath this ranch. And my father, the man who had always dismissed this place as worthless, had likely never realized its true value. I took a deep breath, looking around the warehouse. This wasn't just a storage space. It was where my grandfather had hidden one of the most significant discoveries of his life. But a bigger question loomed in my mind. If my grandfather knew about this, why did he keep it a secret? Why didn't he extract it? And most importantly, did anyone else know about it? A sense of unease crept over me. I gazed toward the horizon, where the sun was slowly sinking behind the distant mountains. Maybe I had just uncovered a secret no one wanted me to know. And I wasn't sure if that was a good thing. I sat on an old wooden chair inside the warehouse, my hands trembling slightly as I flipped through my grandfather's documents. A lithium deposit. I had read about the surge in the rechargeable battery and renewable energy markets. Lithium was essential for electric vehicles, energy storage systems, and even the electronic devices we used every day. Its value had skyrocketed over the past decade, and major corporations around the world were scrambling to secure mining rights. My grandfather had known about this decades ago. But the biggest question remained. Why didn't he mine it? I sat in silence, thinking. Maybe he knew he couldn't fight my father. A man who prioritized short-term profits over investing in something no one cared about back then. Maybe he feared that if the information got out, the land would be swallowed up by powerful corporations. Whatever the reason, one thing was undeniable. Now, this was my opportunity. I didn't have time to hesitate. If I didn't act fast, someone else would uncover this secret before me. 3 days later, I left Texas and returned to New York. This time, I no longer felt lost among the towering skyscrapers or the bustling streets. I had a plan, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. The first call I made was to Ethan Carter, a lawyer specializing in intellectual property and corporate law. I had met Ethan a few years ago while working on a renewable energy project. He was meticulous, discreet, and incredibly sharp. Exactly the kind of person I needed in this situation. When I explained what I had found, Ethan didn't bother to hide his astonishment. Olivia, if what you're saying is true, then this could be one of the largest lithium deposits in the U.S. I nodded. And I need to protect it before anyone else finds out. Ethan agreed immediately. He suggested establishing a new company, completely detached from the Harrington name, to hold the patents and extraction rights. Then he got to work filing intellectual property claims related to my grandfather's extraction method, ensuring that no one could use the technology without my permission. The second call was to Rachel Monroe, a geologist I had worked with on a renewable resource study. If anyone could accurately assess the lithium reserves beneath my ranch, it was Rachel. "I need you to fly to Texas immediately," I said over the phone. "What's going on?" "You'll understand when you get here." 3 days later, Rachel arrived at the ranch with a team of specialized equipment. We spent 2 days surveying the area, collecting soil samples, and taking precise measurements. When Rachel returned with the results, I saw the excitement in her eyes. "Olivia, you don't just have a lithium deposit. You have one of the richest lithium reserves I've ever seen." I held my breath. "If you mine it correctly, this could become a strategic supply source for the entire clean energy industry." I wasn't sure what I had expected, but hearing this confirmation sent a surge of adrenaline through me. I was holding an opportunity that could change the game. But I couldn't do this alone. Mining lithium wasn't a simple task. I needed significant investment to turn this idea into reality, and I knew exactly who could help me. Nathan Pierce. Nathan was a venture capitalist known for bold deals in the green technology sector. I had met him a few years ago at a renewable energy conference, and I knew he was always looking for groundbreaking opportunities. I arranged a private meeting at a luxury hotel in New York. As I laid out what I had discovered, Nathan leaned back in his chair, silent for a long moment. "Olivia, if these numbers are accurate, you're sitting on a multi-billion-dollar asset." I nodded. "But the real question is, what do you plan to do with it?" I took a deep breath, holding his gaze. "I don't want to sell it to a major corporation just so they can drain it dry and destroy the environment," I said. "I want to do it the right way. I want to develop the sustainable extraction technology my grandfather was researching. And I need funding to get started." Nathan studied me for a moment before a slow smile spread across his face. "All right, Olivia. I'll invest $150 million, but I want you to guarantee that you maintain full control. If you let anyone else interfere, you'll lose everything." I clenched my fists. "You have my word." A few weeks later, Harrington Lithium Solutions was officially born. A completely new company, with no ties to the Harrington family, created to oversee the lithium mining operation in Texas. I was ready. I knew that Victoria and my family would soon figure out what was happening. But this time I was no longer the girl they had dismissed. This time I was the one in control. 3 months after Harrington Lithium Solutions launched, the renewable energy market had already started paying attention to the name. The first contracts were signed with leading technology companies in the rechargeable battery and electric vehicle sectors. But the real breakthrough came when we secured a lithium supply agreement with Tesla and a major renewable battery manufacturing conglomerate. In just 6 months, the company's valuations skyrocketed to over $1.2 billion. The media called us the game changer in clean energy. Financial news outlets began reporting on an unknown company that had suddenly become a critical player in the global lithium supply chain. But the most significant part? No one knew who was really behind it. From the very beginning, I had meticulously hidden my identity. Harrington Lithium Solutions didn't carry the Harrington name. It was registered under a shell corporation, keeping it far from any association with my family. But secrets can't stay hidden forever. One morning, as I sat in my office reviewing the latest geological report, my phone rang. Victoria Harrington. I stared at the name on the screen, fully aware that the storm I had been preparing for was finally here. Taking a deep breath, I answered, "Olivia," her voice came through, slow and deliberate. "I need to confirm something." I smiled, keeping my tone calm. "What is it?" "Harrington Lithium Solutions. Is that your company?" I raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "Why would you think that?" Victoria let out a quiet scoff. I asked around. This company appeared out of nowhere, yet it has massive funding and controls one of the richest lithium reserves in the US. And more importantly, it's operating on land that belongs to you. I didn't respond. "Did you go behind all of our backs?" Her voice carried suspicion. "Did you find something that Mom and Dad never knew about?" I remained steady. "And if I did?" Victoria was silent for a long moment before exhaling a soft laugh. You're smarter than I thought, Olivia. I could picture her sitting somewhere in the Harrington & Co. headquarters, fingers laced together, trying to keep her composure while internally seething. I want to meet, Victoria said. We should discuss a partnership. I chuckled. Are you sure this is a partnership offer or just a way for you to take control? Don't be naive, Olivia. Her voice sharpened. I have resources, connections, influence. If you let me in, Harrington Lithium Solutions could become an empire. If not, I tilted my head. If not, what? I will find a way to take back what belongs to this family. I had always known Victoria wouldn't back down easily. Just 1 week after that phone call, Harrington & Co. officially filed a lawsuit against me. The claim? The Harrington family declared that all assets belonging to my grandfather were part of the family estate and should be under the control of the corporation. What did they want? Me. They wanted me to hand over the lithium mining rights to Harrington & Co. and merge my company into their conglomerate. I laughed when I read the lawsuit. Did they really think I would give up so easily? I had anticipated this from the very beginning. When I founded the company, I had Ethan Carter, my intellectual property attorney, construct an airtight legal structure. Every land ownership record was fully legalized under my name. All lithium extraction patents were registered under an anonymous trust. Harrington Lithium Solutions had zero legal ties to the Harrington family. When my legal team responded to Harrington & Co., they had absolutely no legal grounds to win the case. Victoria and the board had moved too late, and I knew it was driving them insane. After 4 weeks of intense legal battles, the court ultimately dismissed my family's lawsuit. I had won. Harrington Lithium Solutions remained entirely mine. But I knew this was only the beginning. Victoria wasn't going to give up that easily. I could picture her sitting in her office, glaring angrily at the headlines in the news. A mysterious startup is threatening the dominance of the lithium industry. Harrington & Co. fails to secure control over one of the largest lithium mines in the U.S. Now, she knew I was no longer the insignificant girl they once dismissed. And I was certain Victoria would find another way to take me down. But this time, I was ready. 2 months after my family lost the lawsuit, I heard that Victoria was in serious financial trouble. Insiders in the investment world whispered about her reckless decisions. After failing to seize control of Harrington Lithium Solutions, Victoria had placed massive bets on real estate ventures and a major investment in traditional oil energy, a sector steadily losing ground to renewable energy. Things only worsened when the real estate market crashed and the oil industry suffered under new energy policies. What once seemed like highly profitable investments had turned into financial deadweight. And then the unthinkable happened. Victoria was forced to sell her Manhattan penthouse to stay afloat. The same lavish penthouse where she had hosted elite financiers, where private investor meetings had taken place, and which had stood as a symbol of her power. Now she had to put it on the market. But what Victoria didn't know was that I had already moved ahead of her. I had anticipated this the moment I saw cracks forming in her investment portfolio. Through one of my shell companies, an anonymous investment fund I had established while building Harrington Lithium Solutions, I quietly entered the bidding war for the penthouse. And just as I expected, I acquired it for less than half its original value. No one, not even Victoria, knew that the new owner was me. Until one late afternoon, my phone rang. Victoria. I picked up, keeping my voice composed. What do you need, Victoria? There was a brief hesitation on the other end, a rare thing for her, but she quickly regained her composure. Olivia? I know you're the one who bought my penthouse. I smirked. Faster than I expected. Oh? I replied, feigning indifference. Would you be willing to sell it back to me? Victoria asked, her tone steady, but I could hear the hint of desperation underneath. I just need a little more time to restructure my finances. I'll pay full market value. I glanced out my office window, savoring this moment. The moment when my sister, the same woman who had mocked me, dismissed me, and believed I would never amount to anything, was now asking me for help. I took a slow breath before responding. Victoria, do you remember when we were in the lawyer's office? Silence. You told me that if I ever needed financial help, you'd be happy to assist, with a reasonable interest rate. I paused, letting my words sink in. Do you remember that? I asked softly. A long pause, then her voice returned, quieter now but still trying to maintain control. So, you're refusing? I smiled, relishing the sweet victory. No, Victoria. I'm just reminding you that the world moves fast. Then I hung up. After losing the penthouse, Victoria continued to struggle with her failing investments. Harrington & Co. gradually fell into crisis. The meteoric rise of Harrington Lithium Solutions caused major investors to turn away from Victoria's company. They no longer had faith in real estate and oil. Instead, they poured their capital into clean energy, where I was leading the charge. In less than a year, Victoria, once the head of a financial empire, was forced to sell off more assets just to maintain cash flow. And me? Harrington Lithium Solutions was becoming a dominant force in the lithium mining industry. Not only had I maintained full control, but I had also expanded operations, developed new technologies, and secured even more strategic contracts. I didn't need ruthless revenge. My success was the clearest answer. One winter evening, as I sat in the penthouse that had once belonged to Victoria, I received a message. From her. I was wrong. But you've changed a lot too, Olivia. If you ever want to talk, I'm still your sister. I stared at the screen for a long time. A part of me wanted to respond, but another part knew that we were no longer the sisters we used to be. I had spent my whole life seeking validation from my family, but now I realized I didn't need it anymore. I set my phone down, stood up, poured myself a glass of water, and gazed out of the massive window. New York City still shined as brightly as ever. But this time, I was no longer standing in the shadows. I stood by the window of my new penthouse, overlooking the dazzling lights of New York City. The glow of the skyscrapers reflected off the glass, reminding me of the years I once felt lost in this place. But now, everything had changed. I was no longer the girl my family dismissed, the one excluded from important conversations, the one they deemed worthless in their world. I had built my own empire, and no one could take that away from me. The phone on my desk vibrated, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced at the screen, an email from my old high school with the subject line, "Special invitation. Guest speaker for this year's graduation ceremony." I raised an eyebrow and opened the email. Dear Olivia, I'm Principal Sullivan, currently organizing this year's graduation ceremony. We would love to invite one of our most outstanding alumni to return as our guest speaker. This year's theme is Finding Value in What's Overlooked. We believe your story will inspire many students, especially those who feel underestimated or unrecognized. We hope you can attend. Sincerely, Principal Sullivan. I stared at the screen. Finding value in what's overlooked. I let out a quiet laugh. A theme perfectly aligned with my story. Because I had been overlooked. I had been underestimated by my family, dismissed as an outsider. And yet, from the land they had abandoned, I built a billion-dollar company, revolutionized the lithium industry, and became an unshakable force in the clean energy revolution. I no longer needed my family's validation. My success spoke for itself. 2 weeks later, I stood on the stage at my old high school's graduation ceremony. Hundreds of students sat below, eagerly waiting. Some of my former teachers were also present, a few of them recognizing me and nodding in acknowledgement. I stepped up to the podium, feeling the weight of every gaze in the auditorium. Taking a deep breath, I began. Hello, everyone. My name is Olivia Harrington, and many years ago, I was sitting exactly where you are now. A few murmurs spread through the crowd. Perhaps some students had heard my name in the news. When I was a student here, I believed that in order to succeed, I had to follow the path that others had set for me. I thought that if I didn't fit their definition of success, I would never achieve anything meaningful. But I was wrong. The room fell silent. I continued, my voice growing stronger. I was underestimated. My family owned a major financial empire, and they believed that if I didn't follow their path, I would never accomplish anything significant. When my parents passed away, my sister inherited everything. And me? I paused, scanning the audience. They left me an old ranch in the middle of the Texas desert. A few students chuckled, while others widened their eyes in surprise. They thought it was worthless. They believed I could do nothing with it. But they were wrong. I let my words sink in before continuing. I refused to let others decide my worth. Instead of complaining, I chose to look deeper into what I had been given. And I discovered it wasn't worthless at all. I locked eyes with the front row, where my former teachers sat listening intently. As it turned out, the land they dismissed as useless contained one of the richest lithium reserves in the U.S. Because of that, I built a billion-dollar clean energy company, becoming a key supplier for some of the biggest technology firms in the world. I noticed a few students gape in shock, while others whispered excitedly to each other. "Why am I telling you this?" I asked. "I'm sharing my story so you understand that your worth is not determined by others. Even if you feel overlooked, even if you believe you're not good enough, even if your path looks different from everyone else's, don't ever let anyone convince you that you can't achieve something great. Sometimes, the things that seem worthless hold treasures only you can see." I scanned the audience, catching the glimmer of inspiration in some students' eyes. Maybe one of them felt overlooked, just like I once did. And maybe, someday, they would find their own lithium mine. I took a deep breath, closing my speech. And finally, if anyone has ever told you that you can't do something great, remember this. Success is the clearest answer. The auditorium erupted in applause. I smiled and stepped off the stage. Today, I didn't need my family's validation. Because I had validated myself. Olivia Harrington's story is not just a personal journey. It's a profound lesson in self-worth, perseverance. In life, many of us have been underestimated, dismissed, or pushed aside because we didn't fit society's conventional definition of success. But success is not determined by others. It belongs to those who dare to see opportunity in what's been overlooked, believe in their own potential, and relentlessly pursue their goals. In the end, the most important validation doesn't come from others. It comes from within. What do you think about Olivia Harrington's journey? Have you ever been underestimated or faced a similar challenge? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more inspiring stories about life, family, and the lessons that shape us.